So I'm Paula Nishijima. I'm a visual artist and a researcher. I study living and artificial networks and systems. I'm interested in the self-organization and swarm intelligence in nature. I'm an artist in residency at LABoral Centro de Arte now, as part of the EMAP residence program. I'm developing the project Plugin Habitat. So Plugin Habitat is named after Plugin City, which is a famous project by the architectural group Artegram. And the question revolving around Plugin City is what happens if you could build a city that is programmed for change. So through this question, I'm investigating the intelligence of plants and how their architecture is adapted to the change. Plugin Habitat researches on adaptive tools of plants, so how they adapt to the environment, to the relationship with other species. So in my previous research, I investigated a lot about social insects and swarm intelligence. And in this project, I'm focusing on plants. So they also kind of have a swarm intelligence. They are modular, they are distributed. They also do not have a central control. They don't have a brain. But even this way, their behavior is very adaptive to the change. And throughout the time, you can see like how they evolved according to a certain kind of climate or certain kind of place or environment.
Se puede llevar estas dos especies de plantao. Viven las dos en montañas. Okay. Pero esta es una especie más de ámbito más templado y esta es más de montaña mediterránea. Entonces, si te fijas, las hojas tienen más pelos que esta. Entonces, todas estas plantas están adaptadas a la congelación y a la sequía. La mayor parte de las montañas del mundo, y aquí por ejemplo, el límite del bosque está más bajo del límite climático por efecto de la herbivoría. Abundan mucho plantas como la genista, donde vas a poner el termómetro, que son plantas con pinchos.
So cushion plants are plants that we can find in the whole world, because their name refers to their shape, to their form, the form of a cushion. What is interesting about these plants is that they can regulate temperature and humidity. So they create a sort of microclimate within this form, in which they can also shelter other species, or you can have like different species cohabiting the same and growing in the same form. For me, the cushion plant is one of the most interesting tools that plants use for adaptation, and the Plugin Habitat is pretty much inspired by this idea of having this living system composed by different plants that also relate to other insects, other species.
So do you want the sensor inside, right? The plant?
Vale. So I decided to use a real cushion plant, which is located here in the botanical garden. And this plant will be sending the data about temperature and humidity, also the light, how it adapts to the change of light throughout the day. And it will send the data to the system at LABoral, where we have two different modules, two artificial modules. So these modules will interact with this living organism, this living system, and they will adapt also to the change that the cushion plant is sending to them. So I went to Ladinis to do field research with my collaborators, Marlene Lopez, who is an architect, and Manu, who is a graphic designer. So they work together in the laboratory of biomimetics, which uses like these tools that plants created to adapt to the climate, to the environment, and also to reinforce their relationship with other species, other animals as well.
Soy Marlene López, soy arquitecta biodigital, vengo de una formación que relaciono la biología con la fabricación digital. Desde hace años investigo el papel que puede aportar la naturaleza en el mundo del diseño, de la arquitectura, cómo podemos inspirarnos a través de las formas, de las geometrías y de los materiales que la naturaleza fabrica y cómo podemos llevar todo eso al proceso creativo, pues, para innovar y imaginar otro tipo de mundos. Nosotros estamos en el Parque Natural de Redes porque para nosotros esto es el laboratorio y creemos que es un lugar excepcional para poder llevar a cabo nuestro trabajo y para poder enseñar a todas las personas que se quieran introducir en esta práctica, pues la cantidad de diversidad que tenemos a nuestro alrededor en este entorno. Lo que estamos haciendo es la investigación de todas estas adaptaciones, estos mecanismos, estas geometrías, estas texturas, materiales y cómo poder llevar eso al proyecto Plugin Habitat, explorando nuevas conexiones, posibles interconexiones entre diferentes organismos y a la vez cómo podríamos imaginar esas arquitecturas del futuro desde el punto de vista de la naturaleza.
So in Ladines, I learned with them about like the local species in the mountains and how they developed like different tools to survive the harsh climate of the mountains. I also learned how to fabricate bioplastic, because my collaborators, they work with this sustainable, different kind of materials, biomaterials, and also different methodologies to apply the adaptive tools, the inspiration on adaptive tools of plants and other organisms.
The structures give stiffness to the foil. So this is what you can play with. If you want to create like an insect wing-like structure, that you could even introduce folding patterns. So you have these thick, rigid structures, and in the middle a very thin membrane that makes it light. And you can control how it folds if you open it and close it.
After this, I came back to LABoral to work at the Fab Lab, and I also received another collaborator who is Professor Tobias Seidel. He's specialized in bionics and helped me with the part about the functional architecture of Plugin Habitat.
My name is Tobias Seidel. I'm a professor for biomimetics at the Westfälische Hochschule in Germany. And my work is mostly with transferring biological knowledge into technical products. I do research with ants and bees and other insects, and I try to learn from them and transfer this into products. This is my day job. Working with Paula is a bit different, but also not so much. So while I normally translate between biology and engineering here, I help Paula to improve the capabilities of the bioplastic, that she can work with it better to give her the mechanics of, for example, insect wings that are very thin and fine and yet very capable. So here we are about the synchronization as a non-hierarchical system. So there's no boss, there's no leader that says when to synchronize. No matter if one gets lost, they will find the rhythm by themselves, they will synchronize by themselves. Then the other idea is that where I look into the artificial neural networks, but from modeling biological functions, so that she might be able to use that, or into the fireflies that synchronize themselves without a master-slave system, but in a democratic way. So this is the models for her that she can use and can adjust to create her art. This is the cushion plant, which receives the information from the outside about the state, and then processes it and relates the information both to the other two modules. For me, this is a very challenging thing because Paula wants to have correct science, and this, so it's the challenge to explain it as clear as possible. It forces me to rethink my whole science and to rethink my whole approach, which is, of course, a bit of work, but also very stimulating for my own work.
So during this residency, I worked a lot at the Fab Lab at LABoral, where I was cooking the bioplastic. I'm using a different plastic here, which is also biodegradable. It's a polymorph plastic, and it's especially good for modeling. So I'm using this for the pinchos, the thorns. This has been something important for plugin habitat as well, because symbolically it's a kind of adaptation that we have to do right now more than ever, of course. So it was interesting because as an artist, I think I had never really worked with biomaterials and putting like this intention in my work. So it was an opportunity also to embody this part of the research into the physical part of the artwork. So in the Fab Lab, I've been working and experimenting with these different bioplastics. All the modules, they are made of biomaterials or biodegradable plastic. There's this experimentation phase that is also important, not just like the research, but I guess it's a way to put into practice what I have been learning also from the plants in terms of adaptation. The audience will find two different modules in the exhibition. It's also important to mention the dome, which is a kind of architecture to simulate a cushion plant, so the visitor can get inside this microclimate created, where two modules will be cohabiting together alongside also two screens with footage from the field of research in Ladinis. And these modules, they will be connected to the cushion plant at the botanical garden, and we'll be receiving data, the information on how the cushion plant adapts to the change in the temperature, humidity, the light. And through this data, they will react to each other in a feedback loop and regulate the whole system. So it's a kind of a hybrid system. And together with the dome, together with the whole installation, they compose plugin habitat. So in plugin habitat, we explore also like this concept of symbiotic cyborg. So this idea that, for instance, plants or living systems, they also have tools that serve the other and not necessarily themselves. So this concept of an individual is much more dissolved in a sense. Symbiotic relationships are not just about mutualistic relationships. It's not just transactional in a sense, but in a global view, they also help the whole evolution, because the idea of an evolution that reinforces relationships instead of the survival of the fittest is also present in plugin habitat. So I like to think about it as a story, as a kind of fiction, in the sense that there is this encounter between art and science as well, these two different views in which they encounter and create this kind of fictional narrative about a different habitat where you could have a hybrid system, a system modules created by humans that cohabit with nature or other living beings. In my artistic practice, I have been researching about collaborative behavior in nature for years. And in this residency specifically, I worked with three different disciplines. Well, not very different, but it's the first time that I worked with an architect. And then Tobias was already my collaborator, so he's a biologist, but specialized in bionics. And the institutional collaboration with the botanical garden also added a lot to the project. And I usually define myself as an artist who works at the intersection of art and science, but the truth is that for me, they have never been really separated. I mean, as an artist, I think that both art and the science, they are different ways of thinking, of seeing the world or understanding the world where we live in.